At 18, my parents kicked me out for being difficult while my golden child brother got everything. Years later, his life fell apart and now I'm the one they begged to fix things. You always remember the first time someone calls you difficult. For me, it was at age 12. Grayson, my younger brother by 2 years and our family's designated golden retriever, had dumped an entire box of cereal onto the kitchen floor. Our golden retriever, the actual one, started pawing it into a sticky mosaic of cornflakes. Enter Mom, stage left, eyes wide, mouth already forming her go-to line. Samuel, why weren't you watching him? I was sitting at the dining table doing homework. It didn't matter. I got a 10-minute lecture, lost video game privileges, and was officially cast as the household's problem child. Grayson got a pat on the head and a cookie. That moment? A blueprint. It wasn't an isolated thing, it was the start of a pattern. Grayson could set the couch on fire and somehow convince our parents it was because I distracted him. If he forgot chores, it was because he had a busy schedule. If I forgot, I was lazy. If he got caught lying, he was going through something. If I got caught, I was manipulative. He was the charming one. The charismatic rulebender. The prince of second chances. I was the storm cloud. By high school, I was exhausted. I kept my grades up. I got a job bagging groceries. I saved for my own beat-up car. And all the while, Grayson failed classes, missed curfews, and laughed his way through every excuse imaginable. But to my parents, he was just figuring things out. I, on the other hand, needed to check my attitude. Things exploded right after my 18th birthday. Grayson borrowed my car without asking again and returned it with an empty tank. I just worked a double shift. I came home furious. Told my parents that if he wanted to act like an adult, he should start paying like one. That was apparently the last straw. Samuel, my mother said, in that tone that wrapped condescension in faux concern, you've been so difficult lately. Maybe it's time you learn what it's like to live on your own. 2 weeks later, I came home to find my belongings boxed up. My dad stood in the hallway with crossed arms and the world's worst poker face. It's time, he said. No conversation. No second chance. Just you're 18. Figure it out. I did. It wasn't pretty. I couch surfed. I worked overtime. Eventually, I landed a rundown studio apartment with water-stained ceilings and a heater that wheezed like it had asthma. It was barely livable, but it was mine. Meanwhile, Grayson was living like royalty. A shiny new car for his 16th birthday. Private tutoring. Designer clothes. Social media snapshots from Hawaii. My parents didn't just ignore me, they erased me. I saw them once that first year. They were at a high-end restaurant laughing over steaks with Grayson. I stood across the street, in my work uniform, watching them through the window like a Dickens character. I walked away. And that night, I made myself a promise, if they didn't want me, I wouldn't want them either. I built a life. Slowly. With grit. With long hours and skipped meals and no shortcuts. By 25, I had a stable job, a better apartment, and a tiny circle of people who didn't look through me. My parents were ghosts. Grayson was a digital highlight reel. And then 7 years after they kicked me out, my mom sent a text. We need to talk. It's important. I stared at it for a long time. And that's where everything changed. I didn't reply to the text. Not immediately. I let it sit for days, glowing there like an unanswered doorbell. I'd spent years scraping together a life they never cared to see, and suddenly I was supposed to jump when the past knocked. On the 5th day, curiosity outweighed pride. I sent back a simple, "What's going on?" The response came faster than I expected. "It's about Grayson." I laughed. Loud, bitter, empty. Of course it was. A few hours later, I was sitting in a chain coffee shop, staring across the table at two people who looked like my parents but felt like strangers trying on human skins. My mom wore oversized sunglasses and shame-like matching accessories. My dad looked 10 years older and somehow smaller, like someone had dialed down the voltage on his ego. My mom got right to it. "Your brother's not well. He's gotten into some trouble." That word again. Trouble. The same euphemism they'd always used to downplay the messes he made while blaming me for the smoke. I leaned back. Define trouble. Turns out Grayson's trouble wasn't just missing curfews or flunking classes anymore. He'd racked up debt. Gotten arrested twice. Lost his job. Crashed a car that wasn't his. Oh, and he'd moved back in with them. Temporarily, of course. That was said like a disclaimer. "So what does this have to do with me?" I asked. They exchanged a look. "Well, my dad said we thought maybe you could help. Talk to him. Be a good influence. You've always been more grounded." I laughed again. I couldn't help it. "You mean the difficult one? The one you boxed up and booted like old storage? That grounded influence?" My mom had the audacity to say, "Don't be like this." Like what, exactly? Honest? Unapologetic? I stood up. The chair scraped loudly across the floor. A few heads turned. "Let me explain something," I said. "I begged you to see me. To hear me. To treat me like I mattered. You didn't. And now you want me to help fix the person you chose over me again and again because he finally messed up badly enough that even you can't pretend anymore." They said nothing. Just stared. So I walked out. And for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel like the difficult one. I felt free. But of course, that wasn't the last I'd hear from them. It started small. A text from my dad. Then another from my mom. Then a voicemail I never opened. A week later, a handwritten letter showed up at my apartment like they thought nostalgia might hit differently in cursive. They were sorry, the letter said. For everything. For how they handled things. For not listening. For choosing silence when they should have stood up for me. My mom even admitted she'd been too focused on keeping peace with Grayson to realize she'd made a war out of parenting me. I read it twice. Then set it on the counter. A few days later, Grayson reached out. I ignored him. Then I answered the second time. He was different. Not polished or sweet-talking. He sounded tired. Hello. I messed up, he said. I messed up a lot. But you were always right. And I wasn't strong enough to admit it. Part of me wanted to hang up. Another part, the one that had waited years to hear even a shred of this, stayed on the line. I don't expect anything, he said. I just wanted you to know. Click. I sat there, phone in hand, staring out the window while the city carried on below. No fireworks. No grand emotional moment. Just quiet. They weren't asking for forgiveness. They were asking for access. And that was different. I hadn't built my life to prove a point. I built it to survive. And now? Now it was mine. So I texted back. I'm open to coffee. But on my terms. And this time I meant it. Update. When I agreed to meet for coffee, I thought it would be a single, awkward reconnection followed by months of radio silence. A novelty. A test. Closure, maybe? I didn't expect what came next. We met at a small, overly curated cafe that sold $6 lattes and aesthetic regret. The kind of place that tries too hard with Edison bulbs and reclaimed wood everything. I got there early, sat with my back to the door like I was walking into a job interview. Then Grayson walked in. He looked human. No showboating. No branded hoodie. Just jeans, a t-shirt, and a nervous stiffness that made him seem like a cracked version of the polished guy from high school who never had to try. He ordered black coffee and didn't speak until it arrived. I know you don't owe me anything, he said, eyes fixed on the cup. But I want to explain. Not an excuse. Just explain. So I let him. And for the next 30 minutes I heard things I never thought I would. He talked about the spiral, the pills, the parties, the people who came and went like the weather. He talked about how easy it was to be loved when he was successful and how quickly everyone bailed when he hit the bottom. He admitted that mom and dad never made him accountable and that without me as the family scapegoat, their expectations collapsed under their own weight. He even cried. Not a sobbing meltdown, just a single, embarrassed tear that he wiped away fast like it betrayed the image he once built. For a brief moment, we weren't rivals or relics of a broken family tree. We were two grown men with the same roots and completely different storms. He asked if we could meet again. I didn't answer. Because while I appreciated the honesty, I wasn't ready to tear open the drywall of my healing to install new doors for people who once locked me out. Then my parents reached out again. This time, not a text. Not a letter. An invitation. A full-page, thick-papered, calligraphy-laced invitation to their wedding vow renewal. 25 years. They were throwing a whole event, catered, floral arrangements, speeches, and matching outfits for the whole family. And yes, I was invited. Officially. With a +1. A week after that, another letter arrived. A note from my mom, handwritten again. I know we can never take back what happened, but I hope you'll give us a chance to try. This event is about celebrating the people we still have. Please consider coming. It should have felt warm. Healing. Instead, it felt strategic. Like they wanted my presence to polish up the optics. The lost son returned, framed in fairy lights for the family album. I talked to my therapist. I talked to my closest friend. Then I sat down with myself. And I asked, is this healing? Or is this a performance? Because showing up out of guilt is not growth. And being visible for the sake of appearances is not the same as being valued. So I made a plan. I RSVP'd yes. But not to make peace. To make a statement. The day of the vow renewal felt like an out-of-body experience. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my jacket, trying to remember the last time I dressed up for a family event. I couldn't. I'd spent so long outside the frame, I'd forgotten what it felt like to even be invited. I brought my best friend as my +1. Not for emotional support, though, yes, they offered that too, but because I needed someone there who knew the full, unedited version of my story. Someone who had seen the cracks, the bleeding, and the rebuilding. Someone who could remind me that I wasn't the same kid they kicked out. The venue was ridiculous. Picture an Instagram ad for rustic elegance, a renovated barn with chandeliers made from wine barrels, long farmhouse tables with eucalyptus runners, a string quartet playing an acoustic version of Coldplay. The works. We arrived fashionably late. Just enough to avoid pre-event chit-chat but early enough not to be accused of making an entrance. But oh, make no mistake, we turned heads. Grayson spotted me first. He gave a half-smile, half-wince like someone had bitten into a lemon. My mother was mid-laugh when she saw me and froze. My dad followed her gaze, his mouth tightening into what was maybe an attempt at a smile, maybe a suppressed cringe. Hard to tell. The entire energy shifted like someone had adjusted the thermostat of the event. I was polite, gracious even. I accepted their greetings without flinching, posed for one photo, and then stayed glued to my friend's side like an emotional anchor. They whispered jokes and ran commentary like we were live-tweeting the event. We sat through speeches, vows that sounded like they were auditioning for a Hallmark special, toasts about family being everything that made me want to stand up and shout except when they throw you out with zero plan and call you difficult for surviving. But I didn't. Because the point wasn't to explode. It was to exist. To take up space without apology. To be seen without performing. To remind them in every breath that I was still here. After the ceremony, my mom approached me. Alone. Clutching a champagne flute like it might save her from drowning. "I'm glad you came," she said. "Really?" I nodded. "Thanks for the invite." Pause. "We're trying," she added. And for once, she didn't say it like it was supposed to fix everything. Just like it was true. Raw. Imperfect. I could have said 1,000 things. I could have pointed out the years, the wounds, the therapy bills. But instead, I just said, keep trying. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But we didn't avoid each other either. And in this family? That felt revolutionary. Later that night, after the lights dimmed and people dispersed, my dad pulled me aside. He didn't say sorry. He didn't even say much. Just looked me in the eye and said, "I'm glad you're doing okay." Coming from him, that might as well have been a confession. So I nodded. And left. And as I walked out under a sky full of string lights, I realized I didn't come for them. I came for me. Because sometimes surviving isn't about proving anything. Sometimes it's just about showing up fully whole where they thought you'd be broken. Life after the vow renewal was quieter than I expected. No dramatic follow-up. No sappy apology dinners. Just silence. But for once it wasn't empty. It was space. A space where my parents didn't rush in with guilt or excuses. A space where I could breathe without waiting for the next emotional whiplash. Grayson texted me once. Just a simple message, "Thanks for coming." It meant a lot. I replied with a thumbs up. That was it. No long threads. No rehashing. Just mutual acknowledgement across the ruins. What surprised me wasn't that we didn't go back to being a family. It was that I didn't need to. For so long I thought closure meant reconciliation, sitting in a living room, sharing tissues, and talking about our feelings. Turns out closure is something you can give yourself. I started doing things I used to avoid. Visiting the part of town where they still lived. Going to the grocery store near my old high school. I even stopped once at that awful diner where we used to have forced birthday breakfasts. I sat there alone, ordered pancakes, and didn't flinch when the waitress called out Samuel. There's a strange kind of peace in being able to revisit places without reliving the pain. At work, I started mentoring one of the interns. Smart kid. Quiet. A little too eager to please. One day he stayed late and confessed he was struggling with his family. Said he felt like the black sheep. Said he was difficult. I just nodded and told him sometimes being difficult just means you refuse to be mistreated. He stared at me like I'd handed him a key to a door he didn't know existed. That moment stayed with me. Because maybe that's what all of this was for, to survive it, grow from it, and then pass that resilience forward. My parents haven't changed overnight. They probably never will. They still fumble when they speak to me. Still act like they're walking on eggshells. But here's the difference, I'm not walking on any. When they ask if I want to come over for dinner, I say no if I feel like it. And yes, when I do. I don't apologize for either. The power they once had to define me, to shrink me into someone who questioned their own worth, is gone. And they know it. That, more than anything, has rebalanced everything. They're no longer the architects of my identity. I am. And I like the house I've built for myself. Update. It's been almost a year since that vow renewal, the unofficial family reentry ceremony, as I like to call it, and life has moved on. Not back. Not full circle. Forward. And the difference is everything. My relationship with my parents? Cordial. Surface level. Like distant coworkers who used to share a cubicle and now only interact during holiday parties. We text. Occasionally meet for lunch. They ask questions about my life now softly, cautiously, like they're still afraid I'll vanish again. And maybe that's the right energy. Grayson, oddly enough, is the only one who's been consistent. We talk every few weeks. Nothing deep. But there's something there now, a siblinghood built not on obligation but quiet effort. He's still struggling, but he's trying. And that matters. The biggest change, though, is internal. I no longer carry that ache, the desperate hunger for their approval. I don't dress my wounds in silence, hoping they'll notice. I don't measure my worth by how palatable I am to people who never understood me. I've created a world where I belong by default. My friends don't ask me to shrink. My partner doesn't flinch at my honesty. My workplace values my voice. I laugh louder now. Sleep better. Eat without guilt. Exist without bracing for impact. And occasionally I look back. Not out of regret, but as a reminder. I think about that 18-year-old kid standing in a hallway lined with boxes, heart pounding from a betrayal that didn't come with warning signs. And I want to tell him something. You don't need to prove your worth to people who only see you when you're broken. You don't owe anyone your silence just to keep the peace. And one day, not today, not tomorrow, but someday you'll build a life so rich, so deeply yours, that their absence will feel like space, not a wound. I used to think being difficult meant being flawed. Now I know it just meant I refused to settle for less than I deserved. So if you're listening and you've ever been the exile, the disappointment, the too much to handle, let me say this. You are not the problem. You are the shift. And sometimes the hardest thing isn't leaving. It's choosing not to return the same. Thanks for following the story. What would you do if your family only came back when they needed you? Drop your thoughts below, someone out there might need your courage to light the way. Hope you enjoyed this story as much as I do. Help this small channel grow by hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. Every bit of support means the world. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.